Welcome to GoPowerCat.com's Power Chat, sponsored by Blue Mark Energy. Well, he joined the Kansas State football program in its heyday and never redshirted. From 2000 to 2003, Nick Leckey was a mainstay on that Kansas State offensive line and playing a significant role in the Wildcats winning that 2003 Big 12 championship. After 6 seasons in the NFL, he retired, very happily may I add, and ended up in medical sales. Here is the first half of a very interesting Power Chat with former Kansas State offensive lineman Nick Leckey. Welcome to another edition of the Power Chat, brought to you by Blue Mark Energy. Today we're joined by a legend. He's truly a legend, Nick Leckey. You like being called a legend?
I like being called a living legend.
As opposed to the opposite. Like, we'd have him on after. By the way, in doing research, I found an obituary for a guy named Nick Leckey. I'd like you to know it wasn't you.
Okay, good to know. Thanks for verifying. I
was
appreciate
you.
that. I appreciate
that's
that.
sad. He was on his way. He was on his way.
Such a good guy.
Nick popped into Manhattan kind of on a random day. It's not a game day. What's it like going to games as just a dude? Well, you're not really a dude, but you're just watching.
It's fun. I remember coming when I was playing here at K-State. I remember coming in on the buses and after eating a crappy breakfast or a crappy lunch, and you're in your suit and tie, and you got your headphones on and you're listening to your Discman with your
not a Walkman.
CD. It's not a Walkman, but a Discman. I'm not ancient. I'm just kind of old. And I remember like getting off the bus and walking into the Veneer complex and just this barrage of smells, of sounds, of people, of activity, and I could tell, and I knew, I was like, people are out there drinking and having a good time, and I have to stay focused to play a football game, and then after that, I can go enjoy all that good stuff. So it was fun coming in, and now I get to experience all that stuff that I never did, and I'm making up for lost time every time I come back.
But you're still doing some of that pregame stuff for K-State HD.
Yeah.
That looks fun.
Yeah, I love that. I love working with Brian Smoller.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime he texts me and was like, hey, I heard you're going to be in town, I'm like, yes. Like, would I rather be tailgating? Mm-hmm. Yes, but I so much enjoy doing that and working with Brian that it's like, all right, it's a no-brainer. I'll go put on the business up top. Right, put the suit and tie and leave like the shorts on and stuff like that down below.
That's what I do when I do my TV show.
Nice.
It's like one day we wore shorts and they had the camera back just a little bit too far so you could see our legs under the table. It was not good. And it's my legs, so it's really not good.
It's unprofessional.
It's
unprofessional. You wear pants.
Because it wasn't clear that I was even wearing shorts at the time, so it's kind of sketchy. Well, let's go back to Grapevine, Texas. Now, you grew up there.
Yeah.
What was life like in Grapevine?
It's a suburb of Dallas.
Yeah.
And, growing up in the 80s, it was a little bit country. There were still some patches. Sure. And then
it's crazy to think about.
It really is now that I go back. But now, and then as I got closer to high school, it was all just urban sprawl. And Grapevine was cool because my freshman and junior year, we had built a new high school, and we won state. My freshman and junior year in 4A, and 5A was the biggest at the time. And you don't realize Texas football. You don't realize what a cult, not even cult, what a bona fide religion.
Right.
It is down there until you get out. And then I was talking to my buddies at K-State, and I'm like, how you had football twice in school, right? And they're like, what are you talking about? I go, you didn't have football in school? Like, no, we had weightlifting. I'm like, Well, we had block scheduling, and you have 4 classes a day, and your first and fifth period class, so first class each day, was football. And on my transcript, it says football. And
That's
it's
crazy.
like, yeah, it's a full-on, like, we did special teams practice, we watched film. This is the late 90s. And I graduated in 2000. So yeah, so we would do 2
Who
days.
thinks that's a good idea for education?
You don't even realize it though until you get out, right? That it's like, that's absurd. Like to have that much football, and it's like, but I mean, that's just the way it is, and the way it was at Grapevine.
But what fortune to grow up in Grapevine. Where
Yeah,
football was good.
It was. No, it was cool, and it was cool too. I mean, when you go back, you have a legacy that you don't think about when you're 18 years old, but you can always go back. I think we just had our 20-year reunion for the state championship 1998 team, and you just think about how cool that was back then. I mean, at the time, I thought nothing of it. A buddy of mine was in town for the state championship game my junior year, and I was the starting guard and starting nose guard 3-tech, and I stayed up till like 1 or 2 in the morning playing Zelda Ocarina of Time. And my buddy came in and was like, "Hey, dude, don't you want to go to bed?" I go, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, it's like 1:30," and he's like, "You got to wake up at 6 and go up to Texas A." I'm like, "Okay, I guess I will." But yeah, you just.
Zelda.
Yeah, Zelda. Well, it's Ocarina of Time. It's one of the greatest video games of all time.
Okay.
Take my word for it.
I will. I will, because I almost got a divorce over Zelda.
No kidding.
I was having an affair with Zelda, apparently, and finally we just had to sell everything because it was literally turned into an addiction.
Oh, yeah. Was that on 8-bit, on NES, Nintendo?
Yep. Just had to get rid of it all.
See, I couldn't. See, actually, too, I had the Blockbuster copy because it was sold out like at Target, and Blockbuster came out a couple days earlier. So I had the Blockbuster game, and this is like the game where you could save on. So I had to pay $100 to buy that game because I got so far deep into it. So that was, it was my Zelda addiction.
That's good. That's good. And then you go through the recruiting process. What was that like?
Maddening. Mm-hmm. Back then there's no texting, so it was all calling the house phone. It was coaches coming by, getting you out of class for a little bit, handwritten letters. Sometimes I get a handwritten note, and I would always lick my finger and rub the marker. They can print that off, and if I could lick my finger and rub the marker, make it smudge, I'm like, okay, these guys are legit, and this isn't just like a computer-generated printout. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. And you just get. Me personally, I didn't like all that attention, or I was like kind of like, okay, I'm going to set up my recruiting trips in January because we're going to go on a deep run in playoffs like we did the year before. So, junior year we won state, and then my senior year we lost first round of playoffs. We got upset, and that's when Greg Peterson was the wide receiver coach. He's my recruiter. He was like, hey, you guys. He came in that Monday after the loss. He was like, hey, you guys just lost. You don't have any recruiting trips. Why don't you come up to K-State this weekend? I go, sure, why not? And one of the best decisions I ever made.
It's funny how that works out.
It is. It
really is.
It truly is. I remember Greg Peterson being there wearing the K-State stuff, and I remember my stepdad was an Aggie. He went to Texas A&M, so I was rooting in '98 for A&M to beat K-State in the Big 12 championship game. Now, obviously, it hurts my heart, right? It hurts my heart right now.
Okay.
So that we know. And so I remember thinking, man, there's no way in hell I'm going to K-State, dude. Like I've got recruiting trips to LSU, to Texas, to Duke, and somewhere else, I forget. I think I was even open, maybe Colorado.
And clearly, based on that high school academic record, Duke was in your plans.
It was. Actually, I actually scored high enough on my SATs as a sophomore or junior to qualify for Duke. So yeah, so I didn't have to take it again after junior year.
Cruise to that football section.
I know, right? Yeah. Exactly. I was using that time for study hall, I guess.
But I mean, those are pretty good schools. What was it about Kansas State?
For me, it was just, for one, I was sick of the recruiting process.
Right.
I wanted to be done with it. But then I think that the cool thing about K-State is that it's in the middle of the Flint Hills. Right? So it's like, it reminded me of Hill Country, Austin, to a certain extent. Mm-hmm. You got the water, Tuttle Creek, Pillsbury Crossing, which I found out later on in my college career. And it's a place where I know, knowing myself, I think I would have got caught up in a bigger city.
Right.
Like you would have never heard about me if I'd have went to Austin or LSU or any of these other places. And I like the idea of coming to Manhattan and focusing on school and football, and that's it. And no other distractions besides Aggieville. And I knew myself enough as an 18-year-old human being to be like, you know what, this would be the best thing for you. It felt like family. You could be in on the ground floor of Google, so to speak, and you can be a part of a tradition instead of, or building a tradition instead of being just another cog in a machine that's been football dominant forever.
You know, I've been doing this a long time, and I would always tell people, you got to remember what a special time you are. You're at Kansas State when it's happening. You're not picking up the tradition like with the second or third grade coach. You're on the ground. You know, when the Bear Bryant is there, the Joe Paterno is starting out, all of those things. Think of all the great coaches, root back the tradition to the coach that started all, the Big Bang coach. You've got that right, and you know it's happening because it was so incredible. But those were really amazing times, K-State. Late 90s. What year did you graduate high school?
2000.
2000.
So Cotton Bowl in the snow was my first year at K-State.
Okay.
And yeah, it was, I mean, and you knew back then, like, I think 1998 season, it put K-State on the national map.
Absolutely.
Mike B being in the Heisman candidate, going undefeated, you know, terrible loss in the Jones Dome in St. Louis, or the TWA Dome, whatever it's called. And then, you know, doing the crappy Alamo Bowl thing. But that put it on the map. And to me, it's like, as a high schooler, like, things I looked at, are you winning and are you Nike? You know, those are the two things in my shallow.
You're not about the three-stripe life?
No, I'm not about three-stripe life at all, too. No, I do not respect Adidas. I think it's from the movie The Program, right? Where it's like, I can't play in Adidas, I got to wear Nikes. And I think that I just took that to heart. And still to this day, I don't wear not Nikes. I don't have one pair of Adidas in my closet. At all. Or Under Armour, for that matter. I'm a Nike man.
So no kangaroos?
No kangaroos.
No Russell Athletic?
Yeah, none of that.
Okay.
None of that.
That's fair enough. I'm kind of a Nike guy too.
Yeah, I like that.
That was just an amazing time you came in, 2000. You know, you're right. It happened. You know, K-State made a run at a national title, but could they extend that? And sure enough, in the early 2000s, they did. But you played right away.
Yeah, I started as a true freshman. My first start was Oklahoma.
Fun.
Yeah, I know, right? College game day is here in Manhattan, and that was my first start. And first play at left guard, I jumped off sides. The nose guard said hut, and we did a double count, and I flinched. And so I'm like, all right, cool. That's how we're going to do it. But I think it was that Texas background helped me with digesting the playbook, hustling, work effort, and my size. Like, I was 6'3", 290 coming out of high school. So I think that size alone and having that background of football, that really helped me to play early on.
Any regrets you didn't redshirt?
Yeah, I do. I really do have regrets, because I started 3 games and then I got hurt. I got my ankle, high ankle sprain, and I was out for like 4 to 6 weeks. So then I got put on the back burner. So I think back in I wouldn't have been able to use the redshirt rule, but I think I look about where I ended my senior year, and I got moved to center, and I was a runner-up for the Remington Award. I always think about, what would you have done with another year at K-State, right? So it would have been, a third-year captain. Probably would have won some awards, because your name was on the list. K-State didn't publicize people besides Sprolzy, his Heisman after 03 and 04. And I do. I think about being in Manhattan for another year. So a lot of things, but then I could have got injured too. Right. So there's good and bad.
Well, under the new rules, you would have just played a little bit, been redshirted, and came back. That's a sweet rule.
Yeah, it is a really cool rule.
It's good for the teams, good for the players.
It is. It really is.
Still probably really is, because it works. That's how things work. Back to high school. You were a high school state wrestling champion in Texas?
Yeah, I was.
What the hell is that about?
So me and my buddies, we grew up watching UFC 1 through 8 on VHS, right? So that was when like Hoist Gracie, Ken Shamrock, Chemo, all these guys were these MMA. And it was where MMA, where jiu-jitsu wasn't like the main thing. It was like, You had like Tank Abbott, who was like a street fighter from Huntington Beach. You know, you had Ken Shamrock, who was like a tough guy from the East Coast or something like that, trained at Lions Den. So we grew up watching, and we would wrestle each other, my buddies and I, and we would do like chokeholds, right?
That's not good in high school wrestling.
Yeah, it's not. So I committed to K-State in December. And that next semester, it was January, and first day back from school, Steve Wills, our wrestling coach, who's also our AP physics teacher, he was like, hey, Nick, our heavyweight is about to fail. We need you to come out and, you know, just earn a couple points, and it's a great way to stay in shape for K-State. And I'm like, okay, cool. You know, I've never wrestled before. It looks like a lot of fun.
You had never wrestled before and you won a state championship?
Yeah, no, I never have. But that's, I never... Well, but I told you, I grew up with my buddies and we were doing the MMA. You know, we would wrestle like with each other, but it'd be like, you know, put them in like a chokehold, arm bars, leg locks, and stuff like that. So I had the gist of it. And my first match was, I got a technical foul. Is that what it is, right? We get a technical, whatever. I got a foul because the guy was like, I threw him to the ground and he was on his like stomach, like kind of like crawling away.
They try to get away from him.
I guess, I don't know. And I remember like jumping on him and doing like a forearm, like pounce into his neck. And the ref was like, you can't do that. Like you just can't do that. Like there's no whatever. But yeah, no, I had this mentality of not caring and then also caring a lot, that it was like okay, I don't want to lose.
Right,
and it was the first time I'd ever been away from a non-team setting. Because O-line, you know, there's 5 of us on the O-line, and we all got to stick together. One die, we all die. And it was kind of a cool feeling to be like, okay, no one else is going to hold me back. No one else is going to be my demise. Like everything I have is in front of me. I control my own destiny. And it was like every match, I'm like, I'm going to go in and I'm going to pin this guy. And I was 20-0, you know, with 18 pins. And one of those was, I was sick. I had it was like my Michael Jordan flu game, right? Where I was delirious. I couldn't think right, and I had to beat the guy on points. I remember one time he had me, he was on top of me, and his arm's right here, and I bit his arm. Because I was like, I'm out of it. But yeah, it was, that was a fun experience. I wish I would have wrestled more. I really do.
But that translates a lot to the offensive line.
Yes.
I love that. You know, everyone talks about cross athletes. If I see a lineman, O or D, that's a wrestler, there's so much leverage involved there and just body mechanics that you don't gain on the football field from football coaching, but it applies once you learn it.
It really does. I mean, if you look at wrestling, it's so to life in the trenches because it's footwork, it's hand placement, it's shifting body weight, right? And it's moving your opponent in a way that they don't want to be moved, or using their own leverage against them. So you learn all these cool intricacies because O-line, D-line matchups, I mean, that's a big wrestling thing without the holds. And sometimes you do hold, you know, you have to, it's part of the game. And I think, if anything, that discipline, I think my first week or two, my tongue was hanging out the side of my mouth during wrestling practice. Because it was the best shape you could ever be in, is wrestling. You know, because you're long matches, and I couldn't even tell you how long the periods were. We had 3 of them, and they're 3 or 4 minutes, and it was like you're just beat up after that, just exhausted after that.
Did you enjoy the singlet?
I did. I wore the shorts for as long as I could, and then I took them off. But yeah, it was funny because they had this. I remember in the state tournament in Austin, they had this like big wrestling mat, right? And I would go back there and I'd be listening to I always like chill before stuff. Like I would listen to jazz or like a chill. I listen to like
what a renaissance man.
Yeah, I like big, obviously Miles Davis and Coltrane. Those are the CDs I was listening to. I love jazz because jazz, I don't think as an O-lineman, you can't be too hyped up before games because you'll jump off sides and you got to be just chill. And that was the same thing I took for wrestling. So guys would be back there with their headphones on, like shooting and, you know, go on the knees and sweating back there. And I'm like on the back mat, like taking a nap, right? But before the thing. So it was cool. It was my way of psyching out my opponent. It was really cool.
Old Coltrane.
Yeah, like old Coltrane.
Love that, man.
Yeah. Miles Davis, in a silent way, is one of my favorite Miles Davis albums.
I can't wrap my mind around how the hell you won a state championship with no experience. Was the heavyweight division that bad in Texas?
I don't think so. No.
Can you imagine how humiliating it was for a guy who's done it his whole life, that this football player just picked it up and whooped his butt.
Yeah, I never thought about it like that until afterwards, but I think about because most of these guys, you're right, they grow up, like my 8-year-old son is in wrestling right now. Ugh. But it's not serious. Like it's just like after school, he does it, it's for a good activity, twice a week in the wintertime. And I thought about dude, these guys, I remember Paul Rousey, he was a sophomore from Highland Park, and he was the guy. I beat him in regional final in overtime. And I remember my coach was like, dude, that guy was really good, and he's supposed to be the next big thing. And it was I remember after that, I'm like, oh, he's been what? Oh, he's been doing this for a while? Mm-hmm. He didn't just start in January? Oh, wow, that's weird. But yeah, you feel for him. But then that's what I loved about it though too, is you don't care about tradition or history or anything like that. It's he didn't want it today. That's it. And that was my mentality. It was I don't want to lose.
I love wrestling. I think wrestling's a really cool sport. I wish K-State had it.
I do.
K-State has a wrestling tradition. People don't know that back in the day they had wrestling, and there's guys that should be probably in the Hall of Fame, the K-State Hall of Fame, that were wrestlers. And a lot of Kansas high school wrestlers end up at Oklahoma State, Iowa, at the great ones. I wish they had it. What drove me from working in the newspaper business was covering a kids wrestling tournament. Mm-hmm. Good stories, but the sound at a kids wrestling tournament will haunt you forever.
Oh, I bet.
The smells and the sounds and the parents. The parents.
Wrestling parents are up there with football parents.
Yeah.
With youth, little league, full contact, tackle football.
Right.
Yeah, that's what drives me with my kids' sports too, is the parents, and the parents who 8-year-old is going to be the next pro athlete, and I'm pump the brakes.
Well, growing up in Texas, when did you start playing tackle?
7th grade.
Okay, that's
my mom did not let me play any earlier than that, and I think that's appropriate. And I was behind for 2 days, and I wasn't big. I did not get big, physically, until my junior year of high school. My junior year, I was 275, and then sophomore year, I was a skinny 6 foot 250, a lean, mm-hmm. Or a skinny fat. I wasn't big by any means, or anything like that.
I didn't fill out till college.
Did you?
Yeah. I went to my freshman year 6'1", 175.
No kidding.
I came home 6'3", 225.
Oh, damn.
For Christmas.
Wow.
That was the fall semester.
Jeez. Something in the water, huh?
Well, it wasn't water. It was beer and pizza.
I figured
beer and pizza. Before 2003, of course, the Big 12 championship, what sticks out to you about K-State football? When you go through the 01 season, that was a dip. A little frightening dip, and they came out of it.
Weird getting rid of that crappy AstroTurf.
Oh God, I forgot about that stuff. That was horrible.
We hated that stuff because it's you make it through a practice, you make it through a game, and unscathed, and you've fallen a couple times or whatever, and then you hit the shower, and it just if you had skinned up your elbows or your knees.
It was like paper cuts.
It's 1,000 little paper cuts, and you put the water on it, and you're like, oh my God, did you just put acid on me?
Yeah.
And it was just so gnarly that you're just good riddance. So that kind of signaled a new era for us. It felt like we were big time. It didn't feel like we were little brother anymore. Mm-hmm. And I think having that confidence, subconscious level is okay, we've made it. Right, and then now it's time to act like that. Now it's time to play like that. Right, play with that confidence of being a team that's in the future with field turf. And
it's amazing when you look back at the stadium and the evolution. All of those different steps represented that.
Yeah,
because the press box you were playing with was the replacement of the original press box, which was a trailer basically.
Yeah. Smaller than my high school's.
Yeah. And it rained inside. Wow. And then now we have the full press box now. It's just kind of every step of the way, and new steps coming. It's just kind of fun to watch. It's like the evolution of K-State football just is growing with that stadium.
And it is too. And I forgot who it was, but someone told me early in my collegiate career, is you're always playing for the people next to you, or the people after you. And it's the same thing with the NFL, right? Where guys in the 80s played for the guys in the 90s and so forth. And it's you're always playing for future players, future generations of Wildcats. And I thought it was cool. And I grasped the concept junior, senior year of, okay, it's a movie called Above the Rim. And they had this game where you try and see how high you can touch on the backboard. And I kind of took that as a challenge personally to be okay, how high can we go to touch the backboard to get to say, look, here's the high water mark. And then for future generations of Wildcat athletes, can you get higher than this mark?
Right.
You know, we're going to show you that we can do it, and this can be done here at K-State, given our lackluster talent or 2 or 3 star recruiting bullshit that you see. And it's just like, man, that's what I loved about that. It's setting that precedent for all Wildcats to come. Be like, man, you want your name to live on forever here, or do you want to be just a footnote in the history of K-State football? And that 02 and 03 seasons were awesome for that reason alone. It was like, hey, here's how high we can go higher.
And 03 started with such incredible promise. You guys were loaded that season. And then the injuries hit and the skid happens. Does it feel like it's just coming all derailed?
You know, it didn't, because you could look at L and you could say, you know, not having that Darren's duo really affected us on offense. I mean, if you look at those scores, I mean, defense did their part, right? I think we went to Texas and, you know, barely lost. And on the road, you know, Vince Young was young, you know, just getting his start. And, you know, those games were winnable. And Okie State, you know, Marshall. It's a tough skid. But, you know, it's like when the Big 12 North and South Conference, it was fortunate for us that those were 2 South schools, right? That we didn't lose to 2 North schools like we did in 02, the year before, because we lost to Colorado and a Southern school, Texas. So, yeah. And then, just one of those things that worked out well for us. But we never lost faith, never lost confidence. I mean, football... And people don't realize this. And there's a certain level of momentum from week to week, but then you have to bring that momentum. You know, you have to create that. And I mean, you're looking at a bunch of 18 to 22-year-olds. Every week's a new week.
Yeah.
You know, every week is a new week. You know, and that's what led us to Oklahoma. And it's like, man, we can do this. We got this.
I have never seen a team that I felt was as mentally and physically prepared for a game as you guys were for the Big 12 championship against Oklahoma. And nobody gave you a chance.
Oh yeah, nobody did. But that's the cool thing is, you know, it's us against the world type stuff, and that's easy fodder. That's easy to motivate a team. But I think the coolest thing about that game was our game plan. And if you look at what happened the week before, we played Missouri, and I think L had a shoulder injury. He had a torn labrum or something like that. So we knew going into the Missouri game is senior day, my last game at K-State, and it was like, okay, we're gonna have to run the ball. Like we're gonna have to, you know, Travis Wilson's gonna be our lead fullback, and Sproles is gonna be our running back, and we're gonna pound the rock, and because we got to protect L's shoulder. So you take that, you get a week off for Thanksgiving, then we go to the Big 12 championship game. We come in Monday after that Thanksgiving, and our O-line coach Bob Sanders was like, listen, here's our game plan. We're just gonna run up the middle.
Right.
And he put on film of North Texas running the ball successfully up the middle, but then I guess coaches didn't watch the game plan, you know, playing OU's defense, and they're like, man, they're susceptible. There's a soft underbelly there that can be exploited. And that's what we do. And then once we started doing that, it really opened up the whole playbook, and it opened up all those dangerous screens, and opened up play action passing and all the deep threats. And it was just, yeah. I mean, shoot, we even screwed up warm-ups. Like we had to restart warm-ups because L was fumbling it or going the wrong way or something like that, and there was no panic. Like you do that in a certain game, like before a game, you mess up warm-ups, and it's like, oh crap, we're about to get slaughtered. And no, there was zero hesitation, zero doubt what we're going to do that
Oklahoma takes that 7-0 lead. I'm in the press box. Everyone's like, well, here we go. You know, here it goes. And it did have a feeling that you guys stayed calm, and then you scored and started making plays. And it was a collection of big play after big play. I think if you ask people, probably that Darren Sproles' screen is up there among the greatest plays of all time, might stick out to people.
No, I could see that. Absolutely.
But you scrambling for the fumble.
Yeah.
Nobody has crawled better than that since Andy Dufresne broke out of prison.
through 50 yards of the sewer system, right? Exactly.
That mad scramble. What is going through Nick Leckey's mind as he's scrambling for that loose ball?
So it reminds me to my sophomore year, we played at USC, and I got a touchdown, but I didn't come up with the ball. So it was Josh Scobie fumbled into the end zone, and I got the credit for it, but I didn't come up with the ball to celebrate. In my mind, I'm like thinking, okay, you better get this ball. Because I think that's all about being active as an offensive lineman. Like you see a lot of guys will shut it down. I always tracked running backs and quarterbacks and receivers just in case they needed a block, if I could catch them, or in case a fumble happened. And on that one, I remember distinctly like falling on it and swiping and missing and thinking, oh no, I got to get this. And just reaching out and grabbing it. And yeah, I mean, it was a critical junction too. It was second quarter and we were driving. And it was, but you don't think about the gravity of the situation or how crucial it is. You just think, I want that ball back. You know, that's it. It's a simple sport.
It's like high school wrestling all over again.
Basically.
Got to beat that guy to the ball.
Exactly.
And, you know, the championship, that celebration just... it's hard to explain how cool that was, because it wasn't just you won a Big 12 title. It was like so monumental for the program, how that happened.
First conference championship ever. And it was we never talked about that during the week. I didn't, honestly, to be honest with you, I didn't know it was the first one until after the game, because, I mean, 2003, we didn't have this age of media and Twitter and social media and internet where everything was like publicized, right? Where it was like, hey, these guys, and I still to this day don't watch ESPN. Like, I don't watch any sports news at all. Like, I actually subscribe to The Economist, and I'm more interested in what's going on with, you know, GDP and all that stuff than anything else. And yeah, it was just cool to me to be a part of the first conference championship in school history. You know, that's why I went to K-State, was to be on that ground floor to establish the base for the rest of the future generations. Not
to bum out this situation, but then you go to the bowl game, you're down in, and it all hits the fan. Yeah,
that was unfortunate. We were out of the loop. We had a team meeting so if the game, I don't even know when the game was, so let's say the game was Saturday. We had a team meeting on Thursday night, and it was like, you know, coach was like, you know, so one of us did something pretty bad. And I was like, what happened? And my roommate Dylan was like, hey dude, who's not here? And I'm like, who? He's L. I go, what happened? He goes, so we had no clue, and then we go to the pep rally and the game day walkthrough on the field, and we're on the field of Sun Devil Stadium where we're playing the next day, and it was like, you know, K-State quarterback accused of rape, and I was like, and it's
amazing you guys weren't even...
We didn't even know, because I remember all these cell phones started going off at the rally, right, at the basketball arena, and I was like, what the heck? And then we get out there and we see, and we're like, wow. And I've never in my life, in all my football career, been in a locker room more dead before a game than us versus Ohio State. Like, it was dead. Like, it was no emotion whatsoever. Whereas, I mean, usually Josh Buell, get people hyped up, you know, get everyone going, and that locker room was dead. Like, and it was just one of those things where if you had all the confidence in the world versus OU versus Ohio State, you're like, golly, this is just like, you're distracted. All right,
and those
you weren't
dudes
present.
Were big. Ohio State, was big.
Yeah, and it was, and we still,
it wasn't a blowout.
No, we almost beat them. We lost by 8.
Yeah,
and after a first half where we couldn't get together, in the second half we figured it out. It's like, okay, this is how we wanted to come out and play. And so, yeah, it was unfortunate. And that's what I think of when I think of the Big 12 championship. I think of that, but then I think of how we should have beat Ohio State in the Fiesta Bowl, too. You know, but, you know, you can't change the past.
And then you left Kansas State, and we will get into that as we continue the Power Chat with Nick Leckey right after this break. Welcome back to the Power Chat, sponsored by Blue Mark Energy, with Nick Leckey, former Kansas State offensive lineman. And now we get him to the NFL, and where you won a Super Bowl ring. I don't mean to criticize it, but it all counts.
It does.
But you played half a season with the Saints and got the ring.
No, I played the whole season.
You played the whole season, but you played 8 games.
Right. Oh, yeah. Oh, I was inactive. Yeah. You know what? I'm telling you, man, I can say this now that I'm out, man. Being inactive was glorious.
Oh, I bet.
It was, yeah. I mean, because you're essentially practice squad, right? And then it's a crappy situation, though, because I go from in the hotel on Saturday night, and then the center gets like the flu. Then I go from being like inactive to starter. So crazy. It went from 0 to 1,000. So I always had to be prepared, but at the same time, it's like I'd wake up one Sunday morning and be like, hey, good, are you good? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, yes. So I'd have no stress. I'd be eating hot dogs at halftime. Awesome. It was fun. It was cool. But then week 9, you know, my play, because, you know, as a backup, I'm with the other backups, and we're playing and with the practice squad guys, and we're playing against our defense, right? So I'm going against the defense. And by week 9, they were like, you know what? We want you to be the backup. And I'm like, crap. So I had to go from like being chill on game days to the crazy thing about football is if you play football or whatever, and then you hate night games. Like a 7:30 game is the absolute most miserable thing in the world because you're in your hotel room just waiting. Just a bundle of energy, and until you get that first hit, that nerves never go away, and it's just miserable. You just want to just die. You're like, I just can't take this. And as a backup, you're active, you're suited up, you're a backup. You don't ever get that first hit, and I'm watching center and both guards every play, and they're getting up slow, and I'm like, oh crap, do I got to go in? Is this it? Do I have to? So it's the worst feeling in the world, the absolute worst feeling in the world.
I'd imagine one of the best feelings in the world is getting drafted.
Yeah, it was.
6th round, right?
6th round, yep, 167. I was actually kind of pissed. I had a really bad medical evaluation from the Cincinnati Bengals doctor staff, and I went from being a 2nd, 3rd rounder to like a 6th, 7th rounder. They saw discs touching, back issues, knee problems, which I didn't have any issues at K-State, and that spread around and it just sunk my draft status. So the draft to me was a crappy feeling.
Oh, okay.
Because I felt like I should have been higher, and I was higher, and then this medical eval came out and it just sunk me. So getting drafted was cool, but I felt like I should have been drafted higher.
So it's kind of like winning the lottery, but then they tell you it's only like one.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. That is exactly like, hey, this is Powerball. No, you won the low-key ball.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
Did. Exactly.
4 seasons, 3 seasons with the Cardinals?
So 3 seasons, and then they new head coach, Ken Wisenhunt, and then they re-signed me, but then they also signed a center to a big deal. So I was the backup there, and I got hurt, and then 4th week they cut me. Because I was coming back from injury and wasn't playing that good. And then 2 weeks later, I got signed by the Rams on the Saturday that we were playing the Cardinals in St. Louis. So it's like all my old teammates, but now I'm in like Rams gear. And
that's gotta be weird.
It's so bizarre. It's so bizarre. But that's why as a player, like, you know, if you're not like the top 5 guys on your team, you're essentially a mercenary. And so, you know, you play for whoever's paying you. And that's just the way it becomes for us journeymen. Where, you know, you can't, you know, you play for everything, you know, you play for the team who's paying you, you give it your all. But at the same time, it's like, okay, you know, this is my team now.
It's like medieval soldiers.
Basically, yeah. Or like, I like Ronin, right? This is one of my favorite De Niro movies, you know, Masterless Samurai.
Wow.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, that's what we were.
And then you end up in New Orleans for the 1 year.
That was, I tell you what, one of the best decisions I ever made was I had broken my foot the year before in St. Louis, where I was finally the opening day starter. Because my NFL career was classic overachieving. All the coaches were like, who's at center? Oh, Nick. We get someone else. Like, let's get someone else in there. And then I would end up becoming a starter midway through the season. Right, I would fight and claw my way to it. And finally, 2008, I thought I was on the scrap heap in St. Louis. Ended up being opening day starter. You know, starter for 10 games in a row, and then warm-ups, I broke my foot. Right, so I was non-weight bearing
That's what you get for warming up.
I know, right?
Dumb idea. Listening to Coltrane,
chilling in the hot tub, yeah. And so next year, New Orleans off season, I'm in the doctor's office, and I just come back from foot, broke my navicular bone, the Yao Ming injury, and the doctor was like, "Hey, stand up on your toes." So like, all right, I did that easy. We're just like a cement floor, and he's like, "All right, take your shoes off," and I'm like, "Oh." And he's like, all right, now get on your bad foot and get tiptoe and then jump. And it was so painful, but I poker faced it and just like that and jumped on it. He was like, all right, you're good. Then I had to have bone spurs removed, and magical season.
It was incredible.
Magical season, because I had all but written off playoffs for my first 5 years. We were terrible. And so playoffs was like a goal, but it was like, okay, it's a distant thing. It's like going to the moon or something like that. It's just not achievable. And man, we went 8-0, 10-0, 13-0, and I'm like, wow, we're going to make the playoffs. That's a weird feeling. And yeah, I'm making that run. But I tell you what, playoffs are funny because, you know, you're so mentally exhausted because you've been nonstop football from August 1 until, you know, February. And I remember like the Minnesota Vikings played us for the NFC Championship game, Ben Lieber. We beat them in overtime. And I remember before overtime started, thinking in my head, like, because you're not defeated, but you're just exhausted mentally, physically. And you're just like, let's get this over with. I don't care who wins. I just want to be done. But we ended up winning, go to the Super Bowl, and talk about least nervous I've ever been before a game is the Super Bowl.
Really?
If I was like, what's the least nervous you've ever been? I've been more nervous for high school games than I was for the Super Bowl. And it was just something where you're so prepared. You have 2 weeks to prepare.
Right.
And you're the long season, everyone's beat down, and it's like, this is it. We're done after this. And you're just like, okay, this is, yeah. And then game day happened, and it was like, all right, whatever. And I knew game day that we were going to win. I heard that, I think it's Black Eyed Peas. Mm-hmm. And it's, I got a feeling, it's like, tonight's going to be good. That song?
I'm glad you sang. That's
yeah,
good.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Couldn't have figured it out without that. And I was like, oh, we're going to win this. That's what I knew. I just had that feeling. I was like,
serious X and an Owen right there.
It's called gut feeling.
Okay.
And I trust my gut feeling, because it holds wings and bourbons. So
yes, exactly.
I trust it. I do trust it.
And man, why aren't you wearing the ring? I just wear that around everywhere.
I didn't. So I opened the door for the team on Saturday, and they were like, the camera guy was like, hey, you got rings? And I'm like, I didn't bring them. I just don't.
No.
I just don't. I always feel like a douchebag wearing it, whatever. It's just not something I did.
It's a little flashy.
It's super flashy, and it looks big. I mean, it does hide from my gnarly knuckles.
Yeah, the offensive lineman hands.
But yeah, I just never wear it. It brings about more attention than I care for.
Do you wear it around the house?
Well, I'll wear it to get out of chores.
Right.
Like if my wife's like, hey, can you clean the dishes? Like, I want a Super Bowl. I'm not cleaning any dishes.
Yeah,
and she goes, you are cleaning. I'm like, yes, you're right, I am.
You know what? That doesn't work. Cancer doesn't work. Nothing works.
Cancer doesn't work?
Okay. No, it never works.
That's too bad.
Nothing works when the wife wants something done. You've lost. Guys, if you're young and single, that's my advice.
Is that?
You're in for a lot of L's.
Yeah. Well, I think the main thing is, besides happy wife, happy life, is you might win a battle, but you ain't going to win the war.
No.
You'll never win the war. And I'm cool with that. I'm a foot soldier in my house.
Yeah.
I am.
She's smarter than me. What am I doing trying to boss her around?
I agree.
You touched on a topic there. I got a lot of stuff I want to talk about, but one of the interesting things about you, you left Kansas State 46 credits short of your degree. Now, I'm doing the math on this, Leckey. Did you actually go to school while you were at Kansas State?
That's the sad part is I might have skipped 5 classes my entire career. I had like a 2.9 GPA, and I was a finance major. And the week before my junior year of college, Jill Shields, she was like, hey, you can't declare finance. You need a 3.0, and you have to switch majors ASAP. I'm like, what are my options?
You had to have a 3.0 to be a finance major?
To declare as a finance major, yeah. Some weird thing. I couldn't declare finance or something like that. It was, she told me that. I was like, okay. So it was like sociology or hotel and restaurant management. I'm like, well, hotel restaurant management it is. I always want to open up my own restaurant.
Yeah.
So I had to switch. So I became a freshman academically my junior year.
Okay. So that explains that. But you end your career in 10, right?
Yep.
And you come back and finish that degree.
So I started.
That's cool.
So I knew. Once you get up there in the years of NFL, they're looking for ways to get rid of you. You're too highly paid and whatever. So I knew. I signed up for classes in fall of 2009 for spring of 10. Not knowing we'd be in playoffs. And I remember I was taking an online course, and I forget my teacher. I think it was like a hospitality law class, and we had a test. Like an online, you had to go somewhere for a test on the week of the Super Bowl. And I remember the teacher said, I will absolutely not give extensions, and you have to do it this time. And I emailed him. I was like, hey, listen, I have a work thing. I cannot make this test, and I need an extension. I need to take it later. And he emailed me. He was like, this is absolute crap. I don't care what you're doing. You can make time. What's your excuse? And I go, well, I'm in the Super Bowl, and so he called me, like, I think the second he got the email, he called me, and he was like, are you kidding me? And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm Nick Leckey. I play for the Saints. I'm taking my degree. He goes, oh my goodness. He goes, yes, take it 2 weeks after or whatever.
Football players getting exceptions.
It's exactly, it's what happens, and they can't get it. So yeah, so I ended up taking it online. It was fun.
That's awesome.
It was cool. It was really cool. Best excuse ever to get out of a test.
That is.
It is.
That's actually better than being a Super Bowl champion
or
cancer. I've got to play in the Super Bowl.
I told him, I go, I'm in Miami for a work trip. I told him I was out of town for a work trip.
Now, that really sounds sketchy.
It does. It was super sketchy. But and he was like, all right, you're cool. You can do that. Like, all right, thank you.
Well, good. Thanks for letting me play in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Appreciate it a ton. Then you transition. What's the transition like out of football and that whole structured life that you have?
Yeah, you don't realize how much of a child you are, that your weeks are handled for you, where it's like you don't take care of anything. You show up, you watch film, you lift, you practice, you work on your technique and skill. Yep, here's everything. You're taken care of. Go home, whatever, sleep it off. I was one where I never enjoyed football. Well, I'm sorry, I take that back. I thoroughly enjoyed playing football. I enjoyed the aspect of, you cross that field of dreams boundary, that it's go time, that you essentially street fighting in wrestling, and it was beautiful, and I love that aspect of it. I didn't like the control part of it, how your lives were controlled. I felt I was smarter than some of my coaches sometimes and butted heads. And so, I almost became a ski bum. I almost quit football my senior year of high school just because I was burnt out with it. I was like, this is stupid. I just want to go snowboarding. That's what I wanted to do. And then even in college, I was like, all right, I'll get my degree and I'll just go snowboarding afterwards. And then NFL got in the way. And
oh, darn.
I know, right? Poor, pitiful me. And so when it was finally done, I won the Super Bowl, they re-signed me, put some guarantee to my contract so I didn't go into free agency or do anything silly or try to go another team. And they traded up in the 5th round to get a center. I knew I was going to be done in New Orleans. So they cut me, and I knew it was coming, last cut day. And I was relieved.
Interesting.
I was really relieved. I was ready to be done with it. I would have played for as long as they would have let me, because it's dumb to pass that much money.
Yeah.
But I knew you're taking years off the back end of your life, but it's a cool sacrifice. You make a good amount of money and you sacrifice the back end of your life, those years when you're 70 or 80. So I was like, okay, I'm cool with that. So once they finally were like, you're done, I went on 3 practices that year, or 3 tryouts with the Ravens, the Bengals, and Miami. And it didn't stick, and I didn't want to play, right? I was trying out, but I was like, I really don't want this. I hope you don't pick me. I want to go back home. And then the next year, lockout, didn't even make it to a camp, which that bugs me. I didn't, because they bring in schmucks. And I'm like, I could have made a team on a camp, whatever. And then week 2 that next year, center goes down, and I didn't even get a call for a tryout. It was like the biggest, greatest exhale ever. It was like,
because you didn't have to make the decision.
Exactly, and that's what but I can. My wife was like, you should try it. Just don't retire until, give it a year. And I gave it that year, and nothing happened. And I could retire, and it could package it up, my NFL career, and be done with it. Put it in a shoebox for later. But I was relieved. I was so grateful. I had a good long 6-year career, and my body wasn't too beat down.
Concussions?
And I could move on. No. I've had a few instances of sober memory loss, which are scary. But it's stuff. I got tested and everything, got MRIs, brain scans, and everything looks good.
They found a brain?
No, they did, surprisingly. A lot of skull. But,
a lot of skull. The skull's important.
The skull's important, yeah, but yeah, some brain too.
Hotel restaurant management, you're in medical sales now.
Yeah.
And I'm personally interested in what you do because it deals with kind of what I'm going through, but we'll pass over that. I want to talk about this hotel restaurant management thing because you said I want to own a restaurant. You're a foodie.
Yeah, I love food. My stepdad put it well. He goes, Nicholas, he goes, I eat to live, you live to eat. And it truly is. And that was the cool thing about the NFL is you have all this money to go to nice restaurants on the regular basis, to buy nice liquor, wine, and stuff like that, to sample the good life. Because to me, it's like, that's all blood money. Right. And if I'm going to be, sacrifice my body, I'm going to want to experience some cool experiences. And to me, it's like food's so cool because it can be done in so many different ways.
Right.
It can bring people together. You share an awesome experience. And I've always thought differently, acted differently. I'm just wired differently. And to me, it's like I go on vacation. I don't really care about seeing a building or a historical thing. I read a lot of history. I love the founding of this country. I love that history, even after that, up to Civil War. I love all the U.S. history.
amazing.
But I don't really care about seeing that history. I can read about it and be just fine. I don't have to go look at a building or look at this. Like, we go to vacations, I'm not doing touristy stuff. I'm eating and drinking. Like, that's to me is a vacation.
But you're not a kind of a foo-foo food guy.
I'm everything.
But you're man food for the most part.
Yes.
When I see tweets, it's steak and wings and...
Yeah. But I also can enjoy
That's
foie
your
gras.
restaurant. That's your restaurant, though, man food.
Yeah. It could be a good one. See, but you got to appeal to everybody, right? You can't call it man food, right? But that's what you serve. I like that stuff, man.
You can't just say no women allowed?
I know, right?
You
can't. Yeah, no, right? That's weird, right? You can't. Yeah, I'll have to check with that one. Yeah, I think the producers of Mad Men called. Yeah.
It's not the '60s anymore.
That's
you
not.
got to move on.
You got to. But yeah, no. So I love food, man. It's a cool experience. It's a community. You're at a big table with a bunch of friends. You're eating and drinking, and that's why I thought I wanted to open up a restaurant. But then I knew.
Are you over that?
Oh my God. I got a job with Cisco Foods.
Oh yeah.
So I was retired for about 4 years, had some kids. I'm like, all right, I better start working. And I went to Cisco Foods thinking, get paid, learn the restaurant industry.
And then you find out how crappy it is?
Week one on the job, I go, I will never open up a restaurant. And I'm so grateful I did this. I am. But then it was also cool because I got sales experience too. I like that a lot.
Well, aside from the fact that it's a brutal way to try to make a living.
Man.
Just try to pay the bills, let alone make a living.
Yeah.
But the back end of running a kitchen and everything
it's terrible.
There's no glory in it.
A billion moving parts.
Yep.
A billion moving. It's like having a newborn baby that never gets out of newborn phase.
That's a great analogy.
You just have to get 4 more newborns to have someone else take care of them, and you scrape the cream off the top.
Yeah.
That's how you make money in the restaurant industry.
Yep. But you're a bourbon guy too.
Oh, I love bourbon.
We share this.
Yeah. So I got into bourbon my senior year of high school. So,
naturally. Sure. Not Kentucky Deluxe. Bourbon.
Bourbon. No, I mean, my stepdad had Maker's Mark at the house in Woodford Reserve. This is back in '99. And I remember having a glass and being like, oh, wow.
Totally different.
Yeah, it really is. And I was like, okay, because, we were drinking Crown. And I think, matter of fact, I was 15 years old. We used to smoke Black and Milds, and I used to buy Captain Black pipe tobacco from CVS. And we're smoking Black and Milds one day at 15. My buddy's uncle was like, what are you guys still doing smoking that crap? Here you go. And he gave me a cigar, because I'm a huge cigar guy too. And it was the Arturo Fuente Hemingway short story. I'm 15 years old, and it changed my mind. I'm like, there's a whole nother world out there that I'm not even experiencing right now. And that was that Arturo Fuente Hemingway short story. That was my entryway into cigars, and cigars lead to bourbon and then all that other stuff.
You're kind of the consummate man. Play a little football, wrestle on the side, eat a steak, have some wings as a snack, and have a bourbon.
That's about right. Yeah, which I'm not. I'm not that guy. I'm not that Texas guy with the Made in Texas tattoo. People are like, are you from the East Coast? I go, no, I'm from Texas, man. I was born and raised. And yeah, I enjoy those things. I do.
But you're from Texas. You played in Phoenix and St. Louis and New Orleans, and you end up in Kansas City. What was the draw there?
I love Kansas City. Living in Phoenix, it's a rat race. It's mini LA. You're competing with your neighbors, arms race. Like, what kind of car do you drive? Where do you work? How much money you make? What's your house look like? All this crap. And we had our first kid, and we had no friends. All our football friends had moved away. And, I was like, hey, let's go back to Kansas City. And we're staying with my buddy, Ryan Littlejohn, and his wife, Jessica. And he said, he's my guy. We're speaking of similar, we're brothers, man. And she was like, let's go look for houses. Because she was a real estate agent. She is. And we're like, we're not going to leave Phoenix. And we saw our house now. It was a crappy market. And we're like, let's put in a low ball. And we ended up getting it. We're like, well, I guess we're moving to Kansas City. But the cool thing I love about Kansas City and the Midwest in general, and Ohio's not the Midwest, by the way, is the people are awesome. The people in Kansas City just don't care. It's like, hey, man, do you like to drink? Cool, I do too. Awesome. Yeah. And there's no like, oh, what are you driving? What do you, I don't know if we can be friends or how much you make. There's no snottiness, man. I love the Kansas City people are genuine. I mean, you don't even get that back in Dallas. Dallas is like that too, where it's all for show and women have to put on their faces to go to the grocery store, right? And Kansas City is like, man, people just don't care. And I love that about Kansas City. It just feels genuine.
You can just live your life.
Basically, that's it. Yeah, there's no pretense. There's no false anythings. You know, it's not plastic at all. It's real, and that's why I love it.
Now, you're doing some stuff for the Chiefs, which I find really interesting, because typically when they bring back, someone to do some analysis, it's an ex-player,
Right?
One of their guys. How did this come about? You're in the trenches. You're doing a podcast. You're doing some other stuff. How did that come about?
First time I did radio, I told my buddies back home, I was like, hey man, you never get this, I'm doing radio. And they were incredulous. Because like I said, I'm the least sports guy ever. Like my hobbies, outside of bourbon and cigars, is snowboarding, right? And it's like all these extreme sports not related to sports at all. Or I like English Premier League soccer, like I'm a big Chelsea fan. So that's that's my favorite sport to watch. And I told him I was doing the radio stuff, like, get out of here, dude. You're like the last person. But I enjoy the creative outlet of watching football, breaking it down, because I'm already breaking it down in my mind.
Sure.
I watch it. I can't. I'm just like, oh man, that left guard's got to pick it up.
You just see it all happen.
Yeah, I'm watching in the trenches. So when this came about, I was like, well, why don't you ask Orion to do this? And they were like, well, we don't want a Chiefs guy, which is interesting. I'm like,
so you don't have any allegiances, maybe?
Maybe so, yeah. Maybe it could be a little bit more raw or not worry about, anything else.
That's cool they did that.
It's really cool. I enjoy it too.
Now, I want to share a little inside scoop with you. Is BJ Kissel I taught sports writing for one semester. He was in my class.
Really? So is that why he's so good?
That has nothing to do with it, because he was never really actually in my class, because it was spring class and he was a baseball
traveling.
player.
Yeah.
So I am stunned at how good he is at this, because I hardly ever saw the guy. He did his work and handed it in later. And he is so good.
He really is. And I remember reading when he was writing for Bleacher Report early on, and I saw him put out some articles, and I remember retweeting them and then him going from there, not because of me, just because he was a good writer.
Right.
But I remember we met up for drinks like 5 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago. He was living in Shawnee. He was really close to where I lived. And he's like, thanks, man. I appreciate it. I'm like, dude, you're a great writer, man. Keep it up. And he got his job with the Chiefs, and he's loving that. He's flourishing.
Good. I'm really, really proud of him.
He's awesome to work with.
Good dude.
Yeah, awesome.
More than anything, he's just a great dude.
Him and BJ and Brian, I love working with those guys. They're awesome.
Earlier this season, you were allowed to open the locker room for
Yes.
the team. The new tradition. I'm not sure how I feel about it. It's kind of got a power towel feel to it.
Not quite that.
But
Not quite that.
But it was still cool. It's got to be cool to do.
It's a cool thing, man. I think with being up against those guys, like, you got what Jordy did it, Semino did it. I'm like, those are some legit guys. Like, I remember in college, I missed Semino by a year, but my sophomore year, working out in the summertime, and I remember working out with Semino. We were running crossfields, and I remember thinking, man, that to me was my high water mark of what you can achieve at K-State. As a guy who was All-American, who was great at what he did, worked hard, and he was Snyder's son. Snyder loved him.
Still
we all
works
loved
out
him.
4 hours a day.
He does.
Still looks incredible.
But that's Mark, and then it was cool getting to know Mark in New Orleans. Yeah, I love Mark a lot. He's a good dude, dry bastard, but I love Mark.
Quality.
But yeah, I thought it was a cool experience opening the door. My family was there with me. My son, my 8-year-old, he's a Texas fan, so I'm trying to slowly bring him back into the fold, and I thought that was something we could do.
How did the Texas thing come up?
One day, we're literally sitting on the couch, and K-State's about to play Texas, and he's wearing his K-State shirt, and we're about to watch the game, and he's sitting there doing this. Like, he's got the EMAW, or the Every Man in Wildcat, and then he's got the Wildcat, and he's got like the Longhorns. So he's sitting there like this, and I look over, I'm like, what is he doing? And he goes like this. It was like this slow transformation to Darth Vader.
No.
And he ran upstairs. He took his purple shirt off, went upstairs, grabbed his Texas shirt, or an orange shirt, and put it on. He's like, I'm for Texas. I go, and I looked at my watch, and I'm like, well, we have 12 years to fix this.
Yes.
But yeah, and ever since then, he's Texas.
Does he like LeBron and the Yankees also?
No, thank God.
He's not a front runner?
Cam Newton.
Okay.
But he stuck with him. He stuck with Cam Newton since he's MVP, so he's a Panthers fan. He cried a couple years ago when the Chiefs beat the Panthers, and I laughed.
Good. That's good parenting right there. We end every one of our podcasts. Well, we used to end a podcast with the overtime. Now the overtime's its own podcast because it's so spectacular.
Big time.
But basically, ask anything,
Ooh.
and we'll answer it. And so we ask one of our people every Power Chat to give us 5 questions. And our buddy Wagcat threw them in because I forgot to put it up on the website. So Wagcat, who's lives in Austin, speaking of which, so we just came full circle
beautiful
there.
Place.
Wonderful place.
Only part of Texas I would move to.
I agree with you.
I'm from Dallas, and I would never move back to Dallas.
Too much, maybe Fort Worth. I kind of like the country Fort Worth thing going on.
Fort Worth is Kansas City with more cowboy boots and hats.
Right.
That's
That's probably why I like it. But yeah, Austin's awesome, as long as you don't have to go anywhere.
That's true. Live downtown
Speaking of
and
good
not
food.
traffic. Yeah, amazing Mexican food.
What school finished second in recruiting for Nick Leckey? If you're not a Wildcat, where would you have been? Oh God.
That was initially Mac Brown and Tim Nunez, they were in my coach's office in December, and I was like, guys, I want to go to K-State, or I'm sorry, I want to go to Texas. What's the deal? I want a scholarship. I want to come. I'm ready. And Mac was like, well, Nick, we're waiting on Lionel Gar out of Dieball and Anthony Munoz, Michael Munoz.
Yeah.
And so the same weekend, Munoz and Gar. Munoz went to Tennessee, committed when I committed to K-State, and then Gar committed to Texas my same weekend. So after I committed to K-State and they lost Munoz, they were like, hey, we want you to come. And I'm like, sorry, bro, kick rocks.
Yeah, good for you.
Yeah.
A little integrity there in the Nick Leckey. How much was a culture shock was Manhattan?
Coming from Dallas, it was big time, but I embraced that. I really embraced that. I knew what I was getting into, and I loved it. Small town feel. You didn't have that in Dallas at all, and it was a big culture shock, but I embraced it and I loved it. What's
it about you and 3 losses in a row? You got senior year, and then didn't the Saints do that too?
Yeah. I guess it's like a biblical principle, right? Where you need to be broken down to your least common denominator. And you need to be stripped away of all your BS and excess and crap, and finally get to the heart of it. And then
your 2 rings are on seasons with 3 losses.
I didn't think about that. Wow, that's amazing. Power of 3, I guess.
I know, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Any good Bill Snyder stories you can share?
Oh hell yeah. We have like another hour.
Should have probably started here.
I know, right? My favorite all-time Bill Snyder thing was our senior year of college. Or obviously senior year, and it's 2-a-days. And we had gone through some rough practices. This is still, you could do like 2 and 2, full pads, and we had gone through a couple full pad days, and it was supposed to be like 150, right? And we were practicing in the on the stadium. And this is back when they still had the ramp from the field up to the locker room, right? It wasn't blocked off, so it was just like a sidewalk that was up. And we would do before practice a full padded practice. Like the word got out, because we're like, hey, they're going to cancel practice. And so everyone, you want to believe in certain things, and that was something I really wanted to believe in. And we had this thing where we would line up on the end zone, and he would come out of the doors, and he would go this way or he'd go that way, and you have to take a lap around. And so we're sitting there waiting before practice to start, and we're like, he's going to cancel it. And he comes out in a winter parka. And he goes, and I was like, God dang it. And he held us up after. He's like, man, this heat, it's all in your head, right? If you can overcome it, then you will be successful. And I'm like, God dang it.
He truly was a robot.
He really was. He's a cyborg.
It's amazing. How can you do that?
It was amazing. I was like, wow. Like he had it unzipped midway through practice, but still, like that kind of theatrics that doesn't get enough credit for his style. And it wasn't even theatrics. It was like,
I'm tougher, dude.
And that's how I took it. And that's what I loved about him too. And I think the best thing ever was there was this really cool in our playbooks my freshman year. They had this motivation section. And it was like all the way at the end. So you read all the plays and it's at the end. And I think it's called The Forgotten Man. And it's like to measure your net worth or measure your value to a team is like go get a bucket, right? Fill it up with water. And he said, while you're in there, you can splash around and you can make all the noise you want. And it said, but the hole that's left and that bucket of water, when you remove your hand, is how much you will be missed. And I remember thinking, like, it's very dark. Mm-hmm. It's a very dark thing to have in your motivational section, but I thought that was cool as a way to, you know what, that's a good point. And it's almost like a challenge to be like, how high can you get? How much can you achieve to try to leave a legacy, or how hard can you work? So I kind of took it as a challenge instead of you're not needed, you're a replaceable cog.
That's true, but then again, the Rams had to move.
That's true. You left. They did. They really did.
That's probably because you left.
It is.
I'm calling an audible on the final question here because I need to ask about Kathy, your mom. There are certain personalities I remember throughout the history of covering K-State football, and your mom is one of them.
She's a trip.
How's she doing?
She's doing good. She's retired from Delta Airlines. She was a flight attendant from Delta Airlines.
I don't do that.
She retired. My mom, she's an enigma. You know, she is social. She's a social butterfly, right? She'd talk to anybody. And I remember going, like, early on, like, some of my earliest memories were going with her to the airport to bid, because, you know, you had to bid on your flight schedule for the next month and whatever. And she would take a 5-minute trip to the airport and turn it into an hour-long trip to the airport. And I remember just watching her essentially work the room or get votes, and so she was awesome. And she became our team mom because she made this this jambalaya.
Oh.
And she would make it in those big old turkey broasters.
Oh.
Right, and she used the Zatarans, and she used to throw in some Cajun seasoning. So you have the jambalaya, the sausage, and everything like that. And dudes would, like, I remember, like, we'd have a home game, and, like, guys would come and be like, "Hey, Leck, is your mom in town?" I was like, "Yeah." And, like, jambalaya? I go, "Yeah." And so everyone would come over after the game and get jambalaya, and we'd, come over late night after hours on Yolanda Way and eat jambalaya.
You lived on Yolanda?
Yep. We lived in, like, the normal neighborhood.
That's awesome. That's my favorite street name in all of Manhattan.
Yeah, Yolanda Way, 3105 Yolanda Way.
Because, I mean, when you're designing streets, of course.
Yeah. It
Yolanda.
makes sense. Yeah, it's perfect. And that's what we used to tell people, come to Yolanda Way.
Everyone would remember where you lived.
They did. It was awesome. So that was cool. We lived in this normal neighborhood, and our neighbors loved us, I think. Old lady across the street didn't love us, but
No, I remember you in college, Leckey. They did not love you. I think if I had a huge budget at Go PowerCat, a new program we'd have, a new video series would be Man Trips with Nick Leckey.
Oh, wow, that'd be fun. What would we do?
Well, you go someplace, and, like, you go to Denver, you do some snowboarding, you eat steaks, you eat some edibles just because it'd be funny to watch. You go sample things, you do Man Trips.
That'd be fun. That'd be a lot of fun. We'd have a good time.
PG-13, soft R. I mean, Man Trips isn't going to end up in...
1970s PG-13, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, a little bit more leeway.
Yeah, exactly. It's cable.
PG-17 and a half.
It's cable. PG-17 and a half. Thank you, brother. It's been a lot of fun.
Appreciate it.
That's it for this week's Power Chat. We appreciate you watching. We appreciate you being a VIP member at GoPowerCat.com. And remember to always listen to our podcast. We do them way too often, but we have a lot of fun doing it. We'll talk to you next week.